My name is Madison Reed, and a single devastating lie shattered my entire family in one fateful afternoon, leaving scars that would take years to even begin healing. Before I dive deeper into this story, I want to make it clear that all the pictures and visuals you see throughout this video are used solely for imaginative and storytelling purposes, designed to bring the emotions and events to life in a more vivid way. I was just 24 years old when my younger sister Lauren told a lie so convincing and destructive that it changed the course of our lives forever. The most heartbreaking part wasn't the lie itself, but how instantly and completely everyone believed it, especially our parents, who had always been our foundation. One ordinary Friday evening, my father called me with a voice I barely recognized, cold, furious, and filled with disappointment. He demanded that I come home right away, offering no explanation, no warmth, just an urgent order that sent chills down my spine. When I finally arrived at the family home, the atmosphere was heavy and suffocating. The entire family was gathered in the living room, but there were no smiles, no warm greetings, only silence and tension hanging thick in the air. Lauren sat there with tears streaming down her face, while my mother held her hand tightly, offering comfort and protection. The moment I took a seat, my father wasted no time and leveled a shocking accusation against me, something so unthinkable that I could never have imagined it coming from my own family. According to Lauren's story, I had secretly stolen money from a special college fund that our grandparents had carefully set up for both of us many years earlier. She claimed she had uncovered solid evidence, bank records, transfer receipts, and even screenshots that appeared completely authentic and damning. Everything looked so real and meticulously put together that it left me utterly stunned and speechless. I immediately denied everything, pleading my innocence with all my heart, but no one was willing to listen. Lauren only cried harder, and my mother continued to console her, while my father branded me as selfish and ungrateful. For hours, I tried desperately to explain and defend myself, but it was clear that the verdict had already been decided in their minds. If you enjoy powerful emotional revenge stories filled with betrayal, redemption, and life lessons, then I invite you to subscribe to She Revenged, because what unfolded over the next 5 years showed me that no matter how deeply buried it may be, the truth always finds its way back to the surface. That very night, my parents made their final decision. They told me to leave the house, not for a short time, not for a few weeks to cool off, but for good. I still remember standing alone in the driveway with nothing but a small suitcase in my hand, watching as my mother closed the front door without even glancing back at me. That painful moment marked the beginning of years of complete silence. There were no birthday calls, no holiday invitations, no family dinners, and no attempts at reconciliation. It felt as though I had been erased from their lives entirely. A short while later, I married the love of my life, Ethan. It was supposed to be one of the happiest days of my life, yet my parents and sister were nowhere to be found. When our beautiful daughter was born, they never met her or shared in our joy. When Ethan and I purchased our first home together, they remained absent from that milestone as well. Every important moment passed by without them, and over time, I slowly began to accept the heartbreaking reality that my family was gone from my life forever. Then, one completely ordinary morning 5 long years later, my phone rang. The caller ID displayed a number I hadn't seen or thought about in years, my mother's. The instant I answered, I could hear her crying on the other end, her voice breaking with emotion. What she said next made my heart stop in my chest. "Lauren is in surgery," she whispered through her tears. She then begged me desperately to come to the hospital right away. For a few seconds I stood frozen, unable to speak. After 5 full years of absolute silence and no apologies, my mother was suddenly reaching out to me in her moment of crisis. Part of me wanted to hang up immediately and protect the peace I had worked so hard to build. Another part of me longed for answers and closure. But when I heard the raw fear in her voice, something inside me shifted. I grabbed my keys and left without hesitation. The drive to the hospital felt endless, with waves of old memories crashing over me. The false accusations, the painful betrayal, the night I was thrown out like a stranger, the wedding they chose not to attend, and the granddaughter they had never bothered to know. By the time I reached the waiting room, my hands were trembling uncontrollably. The moment I walked in, everything in the room seemed to come to a standstill. My mother looked up at me and immediately burst into fresh tears. My father stood up so quickly that he nearly knocked over his chair. Neither of them resembled the strong, confident people I remembered from before. They both looked exhausted, broken, and much older than their years. For a long moment, no one said a word. Then my mother stepped forward and wrapped me in a hug, the same woman who had not spoken to me in 5 years, the same woman who had believed the worst about me without giving me even a single chance to explain. I couldn't bring myself to hug her back right away. The pain ran too deep, and there were far too many unanswered questions lingering between us. Finally, my father spoke, his voice cracking under the weight of everything. "We made a terrible mistake." Those words struck me harder than I ever expected, but before I could fully process them, a doctor entered the waiting room with an update. Lauren's surgery was still underway, and unexpected complications had arisen. No one knew what the outcome would be. The genuine fear etched across my parents' faces was undeniable. For the first time in years, they weren't focused on blame or judgment. They were simply terrified of losing their daughter. As the hours slowly dragged by, none of us left the waiting room. Then something unexpected happened. A man dressed in a professional business suit arrived, carrying a thick folder. At first, I assumed he was another doctor, but he walked straight toward my parents. The moment they saw him, their faces drained of color. My father turned pale, and my mother's eyes widened in shock. He introduced himself as a forensic financial investigator, and the contents of that folder were precisely why my parents had finally reached out to me after 5 long years of silence. The waiting room fell into complete silence as he placed the folder on a nearby table and opened it carefully. My parents looked terrified of what was coming next. I had no idea what to expect, but I sensed it was directly connected to the lie that had torn my life apart. The investigator, Daniel Carter, turned to me and spoke with calm authority. "Madison, you were never involved." In that instant, the world seemed to stop spinning. No one moved. No one spoke. I could feel my heart pounding loudly in my chest. Daniel went on to explain that my grandparents' trust had recently gone through a routine legal review after some old financial records surfaced. During that thorough examination, several transactions related to the missing money were reanalyzed in detail. That was when the entire false narrative began to unravel completely. The screenshots Lauren had presented 5 years earlier had been digitally altered. The transfer records were manipulated fakes. The so-called evidence my parents had trusted without question was entirely fabricated. My mother started crying again, while my father buried his face in his hands, but Daniel still had more to reveal. The deeper the investigators dug, the more shocking the truth became. All the evidence pointed clearly to Lauren herself as the one who had secretly taken the money, not in one big amount, but gradually over several years in small, carefully concealed withdrawals designed to stay under the radar. When suspicion eventually started to build, she had cleverly crafted false evidence to direct all blame toward me. The room felt like it was spinning around me. 5 years of lost time, 5 years of isolation from my family, 5 years of pain, all stolen away because of one calculated lie. My father couldn't stop shaking, and my mother looked utterly devastated. Then Daniel shared the most shocking detail of all. Lauren had confessed everything just the week before, right before her medical emergency sent her into surgery. She had signed a formal written statement admitting to every false accusation, every forged document, and every lie she had told. She could no longer live with the overwhelming guilt as the truth was about to surface. A heavy silence filled the waiting room once more. No one knew quite what to say. My father eventually looked at me with tears in his eyes and said the words I had waited so long to hear. "I failed you." Those 3 simple words carried more weight than the original accusation ever had, because in that moment, I knew he finally understood the full extent of what had been taken from all of us. But there was still one more revelation none of us were prepared for. Along with her confession, Lauren had left behind a sealed letter addressed only to me. A nurse handed it to me later that evening, and my hand shook as I opened it. The first line brought fresh tears to my eyes. "I'm sorry, Madison." In the letter, Lauren poured out years of hidden jealousy. Jealousy of my happiness, my loving relationship with Ethan, and the natural trust people always seemed to place in me. What began as quiet envy had spiraled into a destructive lie that grew beyond her control. She admitted she never imagined our parents would cut me off so completely, but once it happened, fear kept her silent for far too long. The final sentence in her letter stayed with me. If I survive, I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn your forgiveness. If I don't, please don't let my mistake destroy what remains of our family. I sat quietly with the letter for a long time, feeling not anger, but a deep, profound sadness for everything we had lost. Later that night, the surgeon finally came out with the news we had all been waiting for. Lauren's surgery had been successful, and she was going to pull through. For the first time in 5 years, a small spark of hope entered that hospital waiting room. The journey toward healing was neither quick nor easy. Trust could not be magically restored overnight, but at least the truth now had space to breathe and begin its work. My parents apologized repeatedly with genuine remorse, and over time, we started the slow, careful process of rebuilding the broken bonds between us. In the end, the greatest form of revenge was not watching someone suffer for their mistakes. It was simply surviving the lie that had been intended to destroy me and emerging stronger on the other side. If this story touched your heart in any way, please share it with someone who still believes that the truth ultimately matters. Leave a comment below and let me know. Could you find it in your heart to forgive after 5 long years of pain? And always remember this important lesson. A single lie can steal years from your life, but sooner or later, the truth always finds its way back home.